Hello! In this lesson, we want to look at how we can easily create pivot tables using Uipath Studiox. So, pivot tables are a great way to summarize huge data sets or spreadsheets that contain a lot of data. Let's look at a typical example of how we can create pivot tables, in the usual way it is done. So I'm going to open the suppliers Excel spreadsheet, and in this spreadsheet we have the data we want to create a pivot table from. So in the data set we have internal names, external names of all these companies. Then we have their websites, we have the industry they belong to, whether they are a recurring supplier or not, the supplier since, and then the number of employees of the supplier, and the city they belong to, street, and so on and so forth. So this is a lot of data, and to be able to sort of summarize the data, we can use pivot tables. So to create a pivot table in Excel, all we need to do is to go to insert, and then we click on pivot table, insert data from table, and so we will have to select a range. In this case, my range is already selected, but if yours is not selected, you'd usually click on this up arrow and then drag and drop whichever range you want to select. We'll want to place our pivot table in a new worksheet, and so click on existing, or we have an existing spreadsheet, so click on existing, and we'll select exactly where we want to place our pivot table. And once that is done, we'll just click on OK, and it will sort of put the pivot table in our new spreadsheet, and we now have to specify the rows and the columns we want to display on our pivot table, and the summary which we want to see. So I can select on internal names. This would bring the internal names over there, but I don't want to select it as the row, so I can drag and drop it into values. Okay, and then I'll select a city. This time the city would be rows, and then I'll select a number of employees. So the number of employees, I'll have it as a sum of number of employees. So I have a simple way of seeing the number of suppliers we have in each city, and the number of employees for each supplier. And so in Berlin, for instance, we have 39 suppliers, and there are about 8,792 employees for that supplier. So that is how you can create a pivot table in Excel, and to automate that in Uipath Studiox, that is quite simple. And so let's look at how we can achieve that in Uipath Studiox. Okay, so I'm just going to delete the pivot table and then save this file. Okay, so I already placed my suppliers file in my project folder. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to drag the use Excel file activity. Once we've dragged and dropped the use Excel file activity, we're now going to just go and look for the create pivot table. So we see it right here, and just drag that again as well. Okay, so now once we have dragged the create pivot table activity, we want to specify the source. So in the source, we can click on the plus icon. It immediately shows the Excel, and in this case, I'm going to indicate on my spreadsheet. Okay, let's look at, okay, so the reason I got that error is because I didn't select the spreadsheet I'm picking my data from. So I go to my folder icon, and then click on suppliers, open. Okay, I'll keep the reference as Excel. I can save it a bit, and then I'll go to my Excel, and this time I'm going to indicate on my spreadsheet. Okay, so my spreadsheet opens, and my data is under my input. So I want to select all of my information here and click on confirm. Okay, so it automatically can tell that my data is between the is within A and L columns. So and then now I want to give the name the name of my table. So I'll say count by city. That sounds reasonable. Okay, so count by city. Count by city. Awesome. Okay, now where do I want to put my pivot table? So that is the destination. So I can go back to my Excel and then specify in my output file. So we want to put the pivot table in our output sheet. Okay, just close this. Okay, so there is still a red icon. Okay, because I have not added my pivot fields yet. So let's add our pivot fields. So to add a pivot field, we click on add, and then we want to select our field. So the first field we want to select is we want to select our city. So we go and then select city, and the city are our roles, and then we want to add another field. And then you remember we selected the internal names. So we have the internal names, and with the internal names we had them as values, and we counted them. So we count them each. Now I want to add another field, and this time we want to have the field as our number of employees. So number of employees per vendor, and that is a value again, but this time it's the sum. Okay, and so yeah, once we have done that, yeah, that's that. So let's run it in our picture mode and then see how the pivot table gets created. Okay, so I'll save and then look at the picture mode. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to run it in picture mode. Okay, just increase the size. Going to start. Okay, it started. Opens it. Yep. Create it. Yep. And it's created our pivot table quickly and very easily. So let's look at how our pivot table looks like. Okay, and then we'll go to suppliers. Yep, and then it created our pivot table for us very quickly. Did it very quickly for us, and we didn't really have to even waste any time. So, so that's how fast Uipath Studiox and can create our pivot table for us. And yeah, hope to see you in the next lesson.